What's next for IT? In today's economy, technology touches every aspect of the day-to-day operations of business. There has never been more pressure on IT to deliver for our organizations. So what can we expect over the next decade? We need to think differently about how we approach our work to continue to thrive into the future. This requires all of us to be intentional in how we look at our role going forward. Smart IT is an approach to getting the important things done by transforming the way we think, work, and lead. And now, let's disrupt the status quo, simplify the complex, and reduce risk the smart IT way. All right. Hey, welcome everybody to another episode of the Smart IT Podcast. And today we've got something a little special. We're going to have a panel discussion with Syya, Sarah, and Elizabeth. So we're going to really help out IT here in a little different way today. We want IT to express themselves, to express their voice to their internal teams and to the world. So a lot of times technical folks might have a little trouble getting out there in front. But one of the things we talk about in Smart IT is the ability to lead and the ability to communicate. So obviously, if you're looking at your career path, you want to get promoted in the future, you want to go out and start your own business. A lot of times you need the communication skills. You need to be able to present, take data, facts, your perspective, and present it to other people. And in this day and age, we got a lot of cool and interesting new ways to do that, including starting your own podcast, which we're going to talk about. The ability to express yourself either technical or maybe fantastical with fiction to write your own book. And then obviously the ability to create your own ideas, get up in front of an audience, speak, or to actually present something. So everybody loves doing those PowerPoint presentations. So we have all those areas covered with these three ladies today. So I'm excited for this conversation. So Syya, Sarah, and Elizabeth, welcome to the Smart IT Podcast.
Thank you, William.
So I know this is going to be cool. So if we're looking out there, all the million of techies out there, and they're thinking, you know what? I'm not being heard inside my company, or my manager doesn't see me. My colleagues don't know what I do or all the cool things I do. So they may not know exactly how to go about actually presenting themselves in a way that's kind of interesting. So we're going to start off with you today, Elizabeth, because something that you helped me out with is how do you actually find out an ideal that you want to express to a small team or a large team? How do you put that into a presentation where you can actually get your point across? So let's start right there. So I'm in tech. I got a great ideal. I want to make a change. I got my team in front of me or my manager or some other teams. Let's start there. Coming up with an ideal, owning it, and how do I start to think about how do I express this to others?
That is an excellent question, William. And I'm sure you're not alone, especially a lot of my clients are in tech and they face the same issue as you. And it's one of my favorite ones to work on. And we say in communication, especially strategic communication, it all starts with your audience. So you got to think about what you want to say and also how they want to hear it. That's really the first step. How to package your idea in a way that's going to be interesting, palatable, and relevant to the people you're speaking to. That's really tough. You might be really technical. This idea might be really technical, but to get the resources that you need to convince people, different stakeholders, you're going to have to find a way to relate the business value of that idea, for example. So thinking about what your audience wants, what they need, what their day-to-day realities and challenges are, and how you can really frame your message about your idea to pitch it to them in a way that meets those needs, that solves some of those challenges for them, that makes it relevant to them so they can really see, how is this going to affect me? How is it going to affect my team? How is it going to affect our organization? What's the value add here? That's how you get people to listen.
Well, the fun thing that I had working with you, I came to you to work on a very specific presentation. And as we went through that process, I was struggling a little bit because as I was talking about this idea I wanted to present, I started to notice, man, you know what? This audience isn't static. It might be one audience now, an internal team. Then there's another team inside the internal company, but it was a different team. And then I wanted to talk about the similar topic, but it was to an external team. So I kind of like how you kind of guided me through of identifying those various audiences. And then that forced me to rewrite the big ideal that I wanted to get across. So let's talk about that challenge. I know a lot of people probably feel that, right? They nailed that presentation to one audience. They took it over to another audience and they're like, what the heck are they talking about? Because the idea was different. The takeaway was different. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So you talked about your big idea, and this is one sentence that you can use to pitch the core of what you're asking for, the core of your ask there. And we might want to use an if then framing. If you do this action or don't take this action, you can expect this benefit or this consequence. So that's a great way to structure it. This is the one thing you want your audience to remember. The way you mix up that framing, though, could be totally different, just like you said, with what we went through. So when you're thinking about how to frame it towards your audience, think about their pain points. Your fellow engineers are going to have different pain points than your VP or their decision makers. So you really have to put yourself in their shoes. Think about, what are they struggling with on the day to day, and how can I make this make sense to them? You can also adapt your message on the examples that you're using. If you know, for example, you're talking to someone that loves sports, throw some sports metaphors in there. Use everything you know about your specific audiences and find out how to talk to them directly and speak their language. Also, for a lot of my technical folks, that means not necessarily dumbing it down, but taking it from the technical and moving it out towards the business, which can be really challenging. So sometimes an exercise we do is I have someone pitch me their idea without using any jargon. Can you explain it to an expert in your field? Can you explain it to someone with knowledge of your field, but not an expert? And do you have another version for maybe your grandma that she would understand it? That's an exercise you can use too.
I like it. The grandma litmus test. Ooh.
Yeah. But you're not alone. This is a tough challenge. You just got to put that work in the front end to make it more successful. It's going to benefit.
And that's the critical piece there, right? I think a lot of people think you just kind of dive in, crank out a presentation and you're done. But as we went through our process together, it's like, we need some practice. You need iterations on what type of content you're going to have. You need to run through different scenarios here. So let's talk about some of the investment in time that people need to make sure they, one, can deliver on something that might be near term, but just to get better over time as they go through their careers, to be continuously better in getting their ideals across.
Another great question, William. This is a lifelong journey. Becoming a better communicator, I find it remarkably empowering. It's not like we're just born with these skills. Sure, a small fraction of the population might naturally have these skills. Most of us, we have to work at it. And the formula is practice, feedback, iterate over time. And I find it really empowering that anyone can get better at this with their intention and putting the time in. We like to say that if you have a really high stakes presentation, if you're my client, I'm going to want you to practice that at least 10 times out loud from start to finish. It doesn't have to sound the same each time. It's okay if it's a little bit different every single time, but that's what it would take to really get to know your content and then be present with your audience in your delivery. Feel confident about what you're saying. So a lot of people don't practice. They practice in their heads. They need to practice out loud. I want you saying it out loud. Get some feedback from multiple stakeholders. See how your messages are landing. Absolutely don't wing it if it's high stakes. And putting the time in over, it's a lifelong journey. So you might want to start small with some lower stakes opportunities, put yourself out there, speak up at team meetings, smaller groups to pitch your ideas. And then you have to really ask for these opportunities for pitching your bigger ideas. You're an excellent example of that, William. You started a podcast. You're out there with your book tour. You really have created opportunities to hone these skills over a long time. So I would say your journey has been a really model one.
All right. That's some very good feedback, I think, for our audience to kind of take away with. And then you mentioned something about a book. So if someone has a passion, maybe they express themselves to more than one people and get out there. For many years, it was like unattainable, right? If you wanted to go to write a book, it was go to the publishing house, the big guys, and all this other factor that went into getting the book written from your idea to paper out to a book, and out to a bookstore. All right, Sarah, So I know for a lot of people, the writing a book can be a very daunting task. If we went back 10, 15 years ago, it was probably inaccessible for most people. So now 2024, we're now in an age where everybody can get a book out, right? So I wanted to talk to you about just in general what the landscape looks like for if people want to put their thoughts down on paper and then go to the bookstore or go to Amazon and order it and have their name at the bottom of it.
Yeah, absolutely. 10 or 15 years ago, you're right. It was inaccessible for a lot of people. The only option was to, write your proposal, find your agent, hope that some publishing house bought it. And that was time and energy and uncertainty that a lot of people couldn't afford. Today, though, there are so many different ways that people can get their ideas out there in book form. And I think that, for a while when we were transitioning into the self-publishing possibilities, there weren't a lot of resources. So a lot of books were just kind of written out and slapped up on the internet. And so self-publishing got a tough reputation. But today, there is so much more out there for authors who want to bring the right experts around them, their editors, their marketing teams, their designers, and really produce a high quality book that they couldn't have produced on their own 10 years ago.
And that's really important, right? Because I think a lot of technical people may have thought, maybe I'll do a blog, maybe I'll do an article and publish it, and maybe like a trade magazine, something like that. But I think a lot of them may not really realize, hey, they too can at least start that journey, right? To get down and actually say, I started the process and I actually wrote a book. And actually, when I did my first one, it was like, oh my God. And I took it to my parents and they saw it. It was just a fantastic feeling. So talk about that first time person who thinking about, I still can't do it, even though it's easy to self-publish these days.
Sure.
They still feeling like they can't make that first step.
Well, first of all, I have so many clients, whether they're in technical fields or others, who come to me and say, I'm not an author, but I say, first of all, you're an author. If you're writing a book, you're an author. Let's just get over that mental hump right now. And I think if you've never written a book before, even if you have, it's a daunting task. But if we're looking at nonfiction, let's say you're writing a book about your expertise in order to build your credibility, you just break it down into steps. I always tell authors, think back to high school, think back to college, start with that outline, get as nitty gritty, as academic as you can, get your main points for each chapter, the anecdotes that are going to support those points. And then once you have that in place, it's not the most fun part to put into place, but then you can write freely. You can write whatever you're feeling attracted to writing that day, whether it's chapter 10 or chapter 3. And it really opens up the process to people who may not have felt they were writers before.
And the other
intro is the hardest part for me, right? So that's usually the last thing I write. It's the hardest part. So I love what you said, Sarah.
Yeah, I had some clients, well, frequently, but recently especially, who were saying, no, we got to get the intro down. We got to do that. And I said, no, because what you need to say in the intro is going to change as you write the rest of the book.
Yep.
And it's funny. That's what we often recommend for our clients is there's some people who want to do intros before, in the beginning, just to kind of summarize the podcast episode. And I always say, record it after.
Yeah.
Because most conversations never go in the direction you think it's going to be. So writing, it's got to be the same.
Absolutely. Yeah. You never know what you're going to say.
Especially if it's a good conversation.
Yes. And the other thing is to really hammer home this point, right? Because the technical audience may be thinking it has to be very, very technical. It may sound like a handbook, but the world is wide open to them, right? So when we say express their opinions, their voice out there, it could be anything that they're passionate about. So let's talk about that, and even including on the fictional side as well.
Sure. I think a lot of would-be authors say, well, I can't. Stephen King says if you want to be an author, you have to write 2,000 words every single day. And I can't do that, so I can't be an author.
Yeah.
And what I have learned in my career, especially over the last couple of years as my life has gotten busier too, is that there's always a path forward. If you want to be an author, maybe you're writing 500 words a week instead of 2,000 words a day. But if you want to be an author, you can find the time here and there and the inspiration here and there and cobble it together. That doesn't make you any less than someone whose full-time job is writing.
And let's be honest, Stephen King was also knee deep in, that white powdery stuff. So,
oh yes, that
and being
isn't it?
The writer should have, let's just put put boundaries on that, okay?
And on this show, we do not advocate for the use of that particular type of powder.
No.
Talcum powder is okay, not the other kind.
No, I just hear so many authors who say, or they say they're aspiring authors because they've heard that you have to do it a certain way, whether it's what Stephen King says or anybody else. And my message to them is always, no, there are as many ways to be an author as there are authors. So it's got to fit into your life.
The process that works for you is the one that you'll do.
Exactly. Yes.
So if somebody looking like, okay, how else can I express myself? So we got another big craze going on here. So I think there's probably a new podcast created every week, but people can't get to them because they just listen to my show and potentially some other shows that Syya produces. So Syya, I know you've gone way into this and you help a lot of people. Actually, I think you may have, I don't know, did you blackmail me into doing my podcast? I can't remember the backstory.
It's funny because I have blackmailed a few former, colleagues, cause I see the importance of being able to stand out in tech, right? Like, so I used to do tech sales, and the pandemic, if anything, really highlighted the need to stand out, not only for your company that you represent, but for your own personal brand. And we all know this, you guys. We can be, our friends can be let go at any moment in time, right? And so there's no loyalty to being the company person anymore. And so I think I hammered on you a little bit, was saying, look, dude, you have these aspirations. Why aren't you putting yourself up and out there more? And take the content that you're going to do with a podcast. And then now that gives you inspiration for your other books that you're going to write, right? Or vice versa. Your book inspires you for, the podcast, right? Or it could be simultaneous. I don't know. But the idea being is, I think tech people in general have this false sense of, I can bury myself within the company brand and lose autonomy of who they are. So.
Yeah. So for those who are, once again, they may have been intimidated by writing a book or getting up there and doing that presentation. There are a lot of people who are intimidated by the concept of doing a podcast. So Syya, what have you seen out there for those first timers who kind of take the leap and go over and say, let's get started here?
Yeah. Look, man, get out of your heads, people. First and foremost, I say this to everybody, whether you're a corporate Fortune 100 client to a solopreneur, get out of your fracking heads. That's, you just, no one thinks of you the way you think of yourself, right? We're so focused on our own issues that we will not pay attention to you stumbling over words, or if you're uncomfortable for whatever reason, or you start bursting into tears. I mean, they might acknowledge, you're crying, what's going on? But most people will not criticize you for saying, oh my gosh, William, why are you wearing that shirt? Like, no one gets to, I wear black all the time because I know people don't care. Like, they don't care what you're wearing unless that's part of your brand, that you wear purple tie-dye shirts every day, right? Like, forget those minor details, people, because all they really want to know is whatever you're talking about relevant to their interests, and do they find value in it? And if there's an emotional connection to it, meaning for our tech audience, no one's going to get overly excited on speeds and feeds, right? However, it may intrigue us if those speeds and feeds can solve a business problem that I'm trying to overcome. And then it might peak. But again, just because you're in technology doesn't mean you want to digest content that's always technology 24/7. Like, add some humor in there, add some anecdotes, add something. So that's where I suggest people with podcasting, you could do anything and it'd still be part of the industry as long as it's something that your audience wants to hear or see, because podcast now is kind of video and audio now.
So we should probably point this out, how accessible all these mediums are for communicating yourself, right? You as a brand. So before, again, we talk about the book industry, which used to be kind of closed off, but producing media for podcasts is another way, low entry. Most people can go and get into it, as opposed to the old day of trying to get into a big media channel. And then obviously every day you go to work, you're presenting to somebody, right? An update, making a case for more money, a different process, something different. So in all these different mediums, it's all going back to you yourself and letting us hear about it. So I always tell people, if they don't like what's going on in the world might be missing you. And the only way we're going to know you are there, you need to express yourself. So Elizabeth, if I want to spice up something next week on a regular update call or weekly call, can someone get started on doing something different? Because I know we spent a lot of time working on the actual visuals as well, right? To match our big idea and then finally open it up PowerPoint at some point. So let's talk about visualizing, presenting something visual and expressing something next week for somebody.
Yeah, I love what Syya was saying about getting out of your own head. I think that's such great advice. Your audience is like a goldfish. They have a short memory and they're thinking about themselves. So you just got to keep swimming. You got to find that courage to speak up and use your voice. And if you're passionate about something, that'll come across in your delivery as well. And you want to break through the noise by doing something different or unique or authentic to you. Be memorable. So maybe you start out your next team meeting with an unexpected question that breaks the ice and gets everybody thinking. Whatever, the visuals that you're using, we want your visuals to be eye-catching. We want them to support what you're saying, but not replace what you're saying. Nobody wants to read a slide, because if they're reading a slide, guess what they're not doing? Listening to you.
Yeah.
So a lot of times I think the biggest mistakes that I see with my presenters is that when it comes to their PowerPoints, they use them as a document. And sure, you might be creating a leave behind or a pre-read as a document, but the real purpose of a slide is to enhance visually what you're saying, not to replace what you're saying. So that's a great way to engage them. And don't be afraid to do something different. Maybe your company, everybody else is doing these dense, boring slides. Maybe you do something different. Maybe you play a video. Maybe you have a slide with just one message, but get their attention that way. Have the courage to do something different, because that's going to help you be memorable.
And then going back to earlier about the planning and preparation and the practice. So one of the reasons people put a lot of words on the deck is they need to read it because they can't see the notes at the bottom of the deck, and they haven't practiced it. So they need the notes. But of course, we see the notes as well, right?
Absolutely. And I don't necessarily want you to be memorizing. Like Sarah was saying, a lot of people have this preconceived notion of what it takes to be an author. Same with a presenter. And the audience doesn't know what you were going to say ahead of time. So there's no perfect version of your presentation out there that you're going to be tested on, like some kind of oral exam. And that's really the attitude I think a lot of presenters have. You own your content. So I advocate, unless you have to have a script because you're in an executive position, or maybe you're recording a video, or there's something legal, a legal reason, I don't want you using a script. Maybe a script is something that you create in the beginning. Then you create an outline of bullet points that speak to your slides. And then from there, I want you just talking through your bullet points. That's a nice way to wean yourself off of a script if that's what you're used to. It's okay if you need your security blankets. Sometimes when I'm prepping people, even my CEOs, they take note cards up on stage with them because it just makes them feel better. They may never look at them. Those kind of tools are meant to help you, but don't let them hold you back. Don't be overly reliant on your script or tied to the idea that there's some perfect version of what you wanted to say out there.
Because no one's going to recognize it, even if it's not perfect. I mean, look,
what they're going to notice is if you mess up and then you get flustered and you can't come back from it. But if you I always say, just keep swimming, just like Nemo.
There you go.
The audience is rooting for you. Selfishly, they don't want you to mess up because they don't want to feel awkward. And they're like goldfish. If you just keep going, they're probably going to forget about it. So, yeah.
I love that.
Can I ask you a question, Elizabeth?
Sure.
So so all of us have been to enough of these, conferences, right? Let's say, for example, and you've got yes, there are some, on brand messaging that has to take place, right? Because that gathering happens for a reason, right? It's marketing something message somewhere. How much do you see as far as how much of the presenter itself that they can be themselves, that they can inject into that corporate messaging? Are you seeing a trend towards, to stay on message, stay corporate-y, or whoever the presenter is? Are you guys allowing, it's PR and comms, allowing that person to be themselves and push it out in their way?
I would say it's a mix. If you're at a high executive level, it tends to be a number of different professionals involved in figuring out what you're going to say. And it just also depends on the leader. Some leaders are very particular about making sure they're in charge of their content. Others have whole comms teams that are putting together their content. It depends on your organization and the culture there as well as the leaders. I think at the higher level of an organization, there are going to be some consistencies in the messaging that they want to get across. But where you really have room to shine is in your delivery. So not just what you're saying, but how you're saying it. And this is something that we work on a lot. William, we did this as well. You can lean into your natural, authentic presentation style and amp it up a bit. Use hand movements, use facial expressions, make that direct eye contact, figure out how to infuse your smiles, your sense of humor. That'll also help you be more memorable. And we know that audiences perceive that if you're comfortable on stage in a meeting with your content, they assume you're confident. So that's one reason why I want you to feel empowered to be authentic, especially with your delivery as well.
And that's real important when we start to think about standing out at work or in the business environment, right? Get more business because you present well in front of prospects or customers, or internally to your management team looking like, hey, this person's a go-getter. I like what they're talking about. And it's because the other 20 people might not have gotten up there and done it. And this other person decided to put the work in. So that's,
and we never know what's going on in the inside.
Yeah.
There are people out there that are nervous wrecks, but they seem like the most confident presenters because they're able to ride that wave of anxiety and nerves rather than let it fuel their performance or make them change up their game plan. So that's part of what you're practicing as well when you give more presentations, whether it's joining interest groups at work where you can give presentations, whether it might be you're in a religious or church organization, you find opportunities there. But each of these lower stakes opportunities is also a way to practice your mindset and and your muscle memory on how to harness that energy so it looks like you're confident, even if you feel not so confident inside. The audience doesn't know unless you show or tell them if you're feeling uncomfortable.
I love that. And if you wanted to get your inspiration rolling and not be in front of a camera or a crowd, but you wanted to get your ideas all. So Sarah, if you're like sitting at the coffee shop one Saturday morning and you just kind of start to dream about some type of character that goes on some type of journey, what are some thoughts for folks who are just like, hey, let me jot something down on my laptop while I'm sitting there waiting to get my coffee?
Well, if you're sitting at a coffee shop, what I tell people to do is put in your headphones so you look like you're listening to music, but don't listen to music and listen to everyone around you instead. The more eavesdropping, from a technical standpoint, that helps you understand how dialogue works because we speak to each other far differently than we write. We're messy. We start sentences over. We add the ums and the likes. But just from a story inspiration standpoint, wherever you are, the more people you listen to, the more characters are in your head, the more inspiration you're going to get. Maybe you hear a snippet of a fight over here and you hear a job interview over here, and those blend together into one inciting incident for a novel. So eavesdrop, listen, pay attention to what's happening around you.
A first date. Those are awesome. Those are fun.
Those are the best, especially for body language and communication. Totally. Ooh, so good. So fun.
That's a great idea, though.
So, Syya, if someone's thinking, man, you know what? I keep seeing these folks, these podcasts, I have no idea what my passion is necessarily to focus in on what a podcast could be. Talk a little bit about the process that you took me through to kind of hone in on what that might be.
The first question I always ask everybody, what's your why? What's your passion, fire in the belly? Like, why are you doing this? Right. And there is no shame to say, because I want to be the next, influencer. Fine. That's your purpose. That's fine. I don't judge. Right. And if you're paying me, I especially don't judge. But that being said, but you have to know why you do anything in life. Right. Because podcasting, though it sounds like it would be simple, I mean, in the actual execution of it, you're just sitting in front of a microphone and you're talking. Right. And whether you're on camera or not, that's irrelevant, but you're in front of a microphone and you're recording your voice. That's not the hard part. The hard part is what's going to keep you on that microphone. What's going to keep you engaged in your own darn conversation that you're having, whether it's with yourself or with whomever you're with, or if you're commenting on things, whatever, whatever. And so, that's why you see, even though they say there's 5 million podcasts out there, there was an old stat. Someone else is coming up with a new stat, and I don't necessarily agree, but it doesn't surprise me, which is most podcasts fade out. We call it pod fade by the 6th episode.
Wow,
Someone said 3 the other day.
Ooh.
I used to say 9. So I'm like, holy crap on crackers, people. To me, when I see those low numbers, it means you don't know your why. And you don't have discipline. You didn't plan for it, right? You can't write the greatest novella in the novel in the world, the greatest American novel or the greatest global novel and just, wing it. It requires planning. It requires discipline and requires consistency and know why you're doing it. So
I think that's a good through line for all 3 of us.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That is
right?
so true. Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, authenticity.
Yeah.
Elizabeth.
I say, especially when I talk to authors for whom it's not the only thing they do. It's a hobby that they're really passionate about. It doesn't pay the bills. There are going to be days when the last thing you want to do is sit down at your desk and write. So if you can dig deep and find that why and bring that back up to the surface, it keeps you going.
100%. You know what I tell people is that improv exercise, right? Ask yourself why, and then keep one like a 5-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
Why? and what I usually say, and people think I'm silly, but a couple people have come back to me and actually admitted, I would say, ask yourself why and answer it every single time until you start crying. And that's how you know you've hit your why, because that's your emotional anchor. That's what's actually inspiring you and empowering you. Because when you're laying, on your back after a rough day at work or whatnot, or a rough day with life, you got to get up and do whatever it is, whether it's write, prepare your next presentation, speech, get on a podcast, deal with William. Yeah. I mean, man, you got to get up in the morning and you'd be like, I got this.
That's actually research supported, Syya, and that's an exercise that I use with clients to help with their mindset and their preparation routine. So I want all my clients to have a warm-up routine, just like an athlete or a musician or another type of performer. And Amy Cuddy, the power poser, the TED Talk on power posing, yeah, some of her research has also found that if let's say you've got a job interview coming up, if you think about your why and you ask yourself, go deep, deep, deep and connect it to a higher level core value or purpose in your life, that the research supports you will perform better. Because it's not so much about the next 10 minutes. And if your voice cracks or you don't know the answer to a question, you're doing this in service of a larger purpose that connects with your core values. And when we're tapped into that, it changes our mindset. It also makes us seem more confident. And we can tell in your delivery when you're connected to that topic with passion.
Yeah.
I love it.
So you're not crazy. You're not crazy. That is real. That is so real.
It's passion, right? And that's what's translatable. And that's what's attractive is, especially when you're giving a technical presentation, right? And look, you can only get so much excitement out of, again, if you are a product manager, okay, and you are announcing a new product, okay, I understand that's your role to give the basic speeds and feeds of its capabilities, because you got to know how the engine runs, right? Yeah. It's usually not the most exciting, but it doesn't have to be boring in the delivery. The product marketing folks, now that their job is to make it exciting for us salespeople to be like, yay, I'm going to go out and tell everybody around the world, right? I can sell this thing, but it doesn't have to, even if you're an introvert, okay, be yourself. If you know your audience, and you have to know your audience, as that's another thing that I think we all of us can agree on, is if we know our audience is hardcore into, Hello Kitty, make a reference to Hello Kitty. Even if it's not relevant to the topic directly, if you just make some kind of sideline remark of well, Hello Kitty wouldn't approve of, waiting 5 minutes to boot up your storage, blah, 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 blah. I mean,
well, use that. I like that.
Yeah.
They remember it because it's out of the ordinary. It's something that they like and are attracted to. And then after that, they say, what the hell is he talking about? Right. But that's okay.
Makes them want to know more.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You're baiting that trickles.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Hello Kitty. We're going to talk about something that's faster, quicker, better, and cheaper. Hello Kitty. Oh, wow. Okay. I'm thinking about this.
I've always thought of Hello Kitty. I don't know why I said Hello Kitty, you guys. It's the first thing that popped in my head, but I never got into Hello Kitty. To me, it's just like Hello Kitty was just such a non-personality brand that you could ever like. It's such a JPEG of a animated JPEG. I don't know. Anyway, I digress. Sorry, William.
We could have a whole other podcast episode on Hello Kitty, right?
We could. Hello Kitty saves the day and brings the data center back online, restoring service to millions of users. That works.
That's a story.
Yeah, a fictional
We're gonna have to get
story.
some copyright. I know some IP lawyers, and we can talk to Sanrio. Okay.
So if anybody want to call an action, start to write this new fictional book starring this character, hero's journey, going from slow system to faster systems. Okay, we got something going on here.
Hello Jaguar instead. Therefore, we don't have to worry about copyright. Which, by the way, all of us have to worry about, which is often not spoken about.
Yeah.
It's funny. I actually heard somebody talking about they weren't worried about people stealing their content because they said once the person who stole it try to get in front of an audience and talk about it, you're going to tell it they didn't write it. It wasn't theirs. It wasn't their passion, their work. It's somebody else's. So it's not enough just to copy it or throw it into ChatGPT and spit it out. It's like, what are you doing with it? How do you express it? And if you want to show up every day, right, you got a chance to do the status meeting, your update meeting, do these presentations, one-on-ones, one-to-many. And then your nighttime on the weekends, you start your podcast up. And then you see your family and say goodbye, and you spend the rest of the night starting to writing that book. There's plenty of hours in a day for all of this. Or as we say, it's part of development skills, right, for everybody to actually doing a long trajectory here. So it's like a lifelong career thing I think everybody should really pay attention to. And the fact that this is accessible, right? This is no longer locked in for just exclusive club. So if you say 5 years from today that you got your first book, you can order it from Amazon. Grandma can go and order it. And then grandma can go online to YouTube, see your podcast. And then she saw another YouTube video, you getting a presentation at a local user group. Grandma can say, you're doing great work. And she knows about you. And she now said, I now know what you do for a living, right? A lot of times people don't know what you do for a living because they haven't heard your voice, right? Because you're like invisible, you're quiet. So if you don't, I always say, when I'm looking for stuff online, I can't find it. I say, crap, that means I have to go write it, do it, or produce it. Yeah. So the stuff you're seeing going on right now is stuff I can't find. So I said, I'm not responsible for doing it. So
that's your niche.
Yeah. Yes. So somehow awesome. I'm writing 2 books at once somehow because I couldn't find the other one. I said, darn it.
That tracks. That doesn't surprise me about you.
It's like, man.
Motivation.
On the other side of the coin, you mentioned stealing other people's ideas or trying to present work that's not your own. I have a lot of authors who come to me and say, I'm worried about sharing my ideas, or I'm worried about not being original. And especially when it comes to fiction, they say there's roughly 6 stories out there in the world, but you give 2 people the same premise and tell them to go write, their own experiences and perspectives and lenses are going to create 2 totally different stories. Of course, it's a different story from plagiarism, but when you're putting yourself into it, like you said, when you're telling a story from your personal experience that you're not seeing out there, the originality comes with it.
I love it.
Yeah.
So all 3 of you ladies are entrepreneurs. So you actually help individuals and all these different skill sets and present. So you want to start with you, Elizabeth, to talk a little bit about kind of how you help people out when they find you, they Google you. I forgot how I found you. So
I do. I have a company, a consulting company, an executive communication consulting company, Pineapple Strategies. I started that. I went full time on my own in 2019. Before that, I was an academic, a real nerd, and I taught communication in a business school. And that's where I really found my love of coaching and helping people in the business world. It was all the warm fuzzies of teaching with a slightly better pay. So, really we help all different types of leaders from all over the world. And I happen to specialize in helping technical leaders as well. I think that nerdiness just really, it makes us a good match. And we help with everything from presentation design and content creation to coaching on things like finding your voice, speaking up, practicing with your mindset, overcoming any kind of anxieties, and how you want to be showing up in your delivery, so we can get really granular about what to do with your voice, your hands, your tone of voice, all of that kind of stuff. We can do slides. And then we do some other consulting work, just helping with all different types of projects, communication challenges that our clients might be facing. And that's what keeps it interesting. So I feel very lucky that I get to live my passion of communication every day and help so many people through that.
I love it.
Ooh, girl, I got some VP of sales friends I need to introduce you to, because you throw those poor kids in those QBR sessions. Oh my God, what a beatdown. Oh my God, what a beatdown.
QBR, yeah, that's one of my favorite topics. How do we tell a story with your QBR data?
OMG. I actually got criticized for being too theatrical. I'm like, oh, hell no, because everyone was falling asleep. Like, no.
You love QBR.
I got yelled last when my numbers weren't there. No, you want to be entertaining, especially to cover up your...
Everybody wants to be entertained a little bit.
I love it.
Listen to Elizabeth, everybody. Okay.
So how about Ink Drop Lit? Ooh, I love the name.
Thank you. I am a book editor, writing coach, and founder of Ink Drop Lit. I like to meet my clients where they are as authors, whether you have a general idea for a business book or a novel and you need help putting it on the page, kind of hand-holding all the way through, or you come to me with a pretty finished draft and say, I just need help with the polish. I'm here for you. I have also, in the last couple of years, just realized how many authors feel like they're alone in trying to be writers and all the challenges that they face as writers, particularly when they also have full-time jobs or kids or other responsibilities. So I just this spring founded a writing group that brings authors together on a regular basis on Zoom, provides craft resources, provides camaraderie, just tries to bring that confidence and that joy and that fun back into the writing life. And you can find all of that on my website, which is inkdroplit.com.
I love it. And then Brilliant Beam Media. Ooh, that sounds kind of cool.
I know. Look, so the inspiration around the name Brilliant Beam Media was, if you guys are of a certain age, I was really a big fan of the concept of the Care Bear Power Stair.
Yes.
And so knowing that we have our own internal lights within ourselves, that if we combine our lights together, it just creates one more big, brilliant beam. Because I believe in all ships rising with the tide, and putting together content, whether it's digital, or if it's like in a physical form, like a book, for example, or if it's in a presentation, you want to bring people with you along for the ride, whatever it is. And so that's why Brilliant Bee Media is the name of the company. And what we do is we do strategic consulting for all things social media, management, engagement, and all the content around it. So that does include podcasting, live streams, as well as other, video type content, since that seems to be the popular trend right now. And I'm crazy fun. Ask William. He loves working with me. Don't you? Say it, William.
She's kind of fun. Man.
Fun.
So better stories later. Fun. So we should probably hit home this point, right? I think some people got stuck in the trap of limiting their continual growth to what their company is paying for, right? And they'll say, oh, I know I would do it, but my company won't pay X amount of dollars. So I think we want to hit home the point that you should be investing out of your own pocket every year to improve yourself. You should have your own budget that where you would go out into the marketplace, find people like Pineapple and Ink Drop and Brilliant Beam to say, this is what I'm going to do for myself in my career track. It's going to be reflected in an expression of myself. It's going to be expression in the pocketbook, right? How much money you can make if you stay in a corporation or if you go out on your own as an entrepreneur. But you should be tracking and investing in yourself. And I say, like, in this day and age in 2024, it's accessible. You can put it into your budget and account for it. And I just wanted to bring you ladies on here, showcase the entrepreneurs here and say it's possible to get rolling here, to develop continuously, improving yourself. And if you look out and don't like what you see in the world, more than likely we're missing you. And here are some ways to get rolling here. So I will let everybody say any final words before we wrap up this episode. Any parting thoughts for my audience here?
Just you can do it. You can do it. You can do it wherever you're at. Like Sarah said, wherever you're at, you can start. You don't have to even have a specific goal in mind. You might just have a fear that you want to face. And people like us are out here to help people like you. This is our passion. And we are here to support you along that journey and to fulfill your dreams, whatever they might be. So have the courage to take that step, ask for help, and see where that can lead you. It can be a fun journey.
I have authors all the time who say, this is really bad. I'm so sorry I'm giving it to you. I'm like, this is literally my job. I love that I can help you get better. So even if you feel like you're really bad, get going.
Yeah. To add on to that, you guys, literally do one little thing towards that goal. One little thing. It could literally be, I decide to pick up a pen today. That's it. It's a small win, but those small wins are the ones that keep moving you forward. So everyone, if you're interested, just do it. Get out of your head and just go for it. I can't express more how much I agree with you, ladies. Thank you so much. And William, thank you for, inviting us and me to the show.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I love having these kinds of conversations with like-minded, especially ladies and entrepreneurs. And you, William, of course, just a wonderful person to work with.
I love it. So if you're ready to start your own podcast, write your first book, or just start wowing your audiences with your presentations, you got resources. So we're going to wrap right there for another episode of the Smart IT Podcast. Remember to keep on checking us out. We got a lot of cool content. We have a lot of cool people on, interesting people, and you can do it if you're looking for it. So until next time, take care. Thanks for joining another episode of the Smart IT Podcast, where we explore what's next for IT and disrupt the status quo, simplify the complex, and reduce risk together. If you like what you hear, please like, subscribe, and leave your comments. And for more Smart IT wisdom, check out my website at williamreed.info.